Happy we are excited for this one because this class is going to teach you how to put more money back into your pockets immediately if you're a real estate investor, if you're a homeowner, or even if you're someone looking to buy and invest from property. This can be an option that could take your rate of return from 6, 7% to 10, 12%. So really excited to have Andy on. I was on YouTube watching a few of his videos and I'm like, wow, we need to get him on one of our live classes. So in the chat box, everyone, just say welcome, Andy, and I'm just going to hand it over to him, and he's just going to jump right in. So, Andy, thank you for taking the time to be here today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Aaron. Thank you so much. Really happy to be here.
Amazing. So I think you're all set and good to go. And yeah, if there's any questions, we'll jump right in.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, welcome everyone to today's session. We're going to be talking about investing in second suites and garden suites. Really appreciate you all taking the time out to attend. Promise I'll do my best to make it worth your while. So I'll be sticking around at the end for Q&A. Okay, so we'll try to get through most of this presentation. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. Okay, so right now, there's a perfect storm of circumstances, I feel, in this time in history that is really creating one of the biggest opportunities in real estate. And that is the densification of our existing urban residential infrastructure. In this coming decade, we're really going to see an acceleration in the transformation of single-family homes into multiple family properties. So there are numerous factors that are driving this trend, and as a result, there will be an incredible window of opportunity for many homeowners and investors to capitalize on this trend. So this is something that I've personally started to do over a decade ago with my own portfolio, and about 6 years ago started to help clients who are mostly homeowners and small investors. So just a little introduction with Suite Additions and our team. So we've started in 2015. I started myself, and since that time, we've acted as consultants and designers to assist homeowners and investors to convert single-family homes to 2 or 3 legal units. Since then, we've grown to a team of 6 people as of 2021, and now we're beginning to work on detached accessory units, commonly referred to as garden suites. So during this time period, we've worked on over 300 projects, most of which we're helping design and manage all the permit work required to add in a legal second unit. We've also completed small-scale infill developments where we sever single-family lots into multiple lots and then building new houses and purpose-built second suites. So here are a few photos, just a snapshot of some of the work that we've done. Going forward again, we will be performing a lot of designs and construction on detached garden suites that are in your backyard. So that part is actually very exciting. Okay, so you guys don't need me to tell you that there's definitely a housing affordability crisis right now. There are a number of factors driving this trend. So let's quickly go through a few of them. You can see this. This was actually from BlogTO. A lot of you folks I know are in the Toronto and Ontario area. A lot of you are, I know, across the country as well. But this is something that is nationwide, and a lot of it is worldwide, actually, right? So definitely, there are a bunch of factors that are driving this trend. The first, of course, is immigration. Canada's targeting a record immigration level of 400,000 new residents per year. In the Greater Toronto area, we're expecting about 100,000 people every year. There's also a trend of in-migration and urbanization, right? So this is kind of a worldwide trend of migration from rural areas to urban areas, driving the demand for urban living environments around the world, right? Despite the pandemic, people still want to live in urban environments. The United Nations reports that the current urban population globally is at 55%, and it's expected to increase to 68% by 2050. Next is the low interest rate environment for the past 2 decades, allowing for more people to afford a more expensive home due to lower monthly payments. You can see the rate in 2008 hovering around 6%, while a 5-year fixed rate in September of 2021 is around 1.68%. So this is the lowest I've ever seen in my lifetime. There's also been a significant demographic shift in terms of the number of households per housing unit. Despite a lack of housing, there are actually many homes that have less people living in them. Over the past several decades, household sizes have been reduced due to social demographics, thereby requiring more housing per capita. According to StatsCan, the average household size in 1961 was 7.9, and in 2011 it was 2.5. So it's just really been going down as a general trend. The next one is really a big one, which is the supply constraints of housing. Out of the G7 nations, Canada is the most difficult for obtaining a building permit. And in this article, it states that according to a World Bank survey, Canada ranks 64th out of 190 nations in terms of the ease of obtaining a construction permit. Okay, so this really reflects a lack in e-permitting sophistication. And as a G7 country, G20 country, developed country, it's really unacceptable for us to be ranked 64th out of 190. According to Scotiabank, Canada has the lowest number of housing units per 1,000 residents of any G7 country. The number of housing units per 1,000 Canadians has been falling since 2016. And we need an extra 100,000 units right now just to keep up with the demand from 2016, right? So we have a federal policy that is really pushing towards more immigration, but we don't have the housing to support it. So this, of course, creates an opportunity. And lastly, perhaps the biggest driver of real estate prices skyrocketing is really the loose fiscal and monetary policy from the government that's driving asset prices, right? And this also is not just Canada. This is worldwide. We're seeing it everywhere. And a lot of it is, of course, in reaction to the pandemic. So the chart above shows Canada's government gross debt to GDP, and the chart below is the liabilities held by the Bank of Canada. Now, it makes sense when, despite a pandemic and economic hardship across the country, you still have 20% year-over-year gains in real estate. Without this background information, it's easy for many people to simply state that the market is overheated and that it's going to, crash back down to earth anytime soon. However, when you understand the macro backdrop, things really start to make a lot more sense. You understand that there are no real factors in the big pictures that are driving the trend the other way. That's not to say that there won't be a short-term correction, but there isn't any meaningful evidence to show that house prices are going to head in the opposite direction anytime soon. Okay. Now, this is obviously not good for many people, including those who aren't already in the housing market, or even for those of us who are looking to buy property as an investment. Okay. So, make no mistake, this is indeed a crisis. It's not really good for, our overall society. And what we can do is take advantage of these trends to create more housing because we don't have wide policies that will allow, a lot of developers to do that. Now, if you look at this chart here, this is for the city of Hamilton, which is a city that we do a lot of work in. Of course, for those of you who are in the GTA, you know that Hamilton is just about an hour away from Toronto. A lot of investors have gone to that city. A lot of homeowners from that's been priced out of Toronto moved to Hamilton, and now Hamilton's actually not affordable in a lot of cases, right? If you look at detached housing prices, they've gone up 20 to 30% year over year. Okay, so we're gonna have a little fun here. In any crisis, what do we have? So in Chinese, there are two characters that represent crisis. That first symbol represents danger, and the second one, if anybody wants to take a guess on the the chat box. You guessed it, opportunity. Now, because we're in such a short supply of housing, our provincial government has passed several bills in recent years to make several housing densification options available and encourage. So in 2012, Bill 140, which requires all municipalities to allow legal second suites. And in 2019, Bill 108, which requires all municipalities to allow detached accessory structures as third units. So these are also known as backyard garden suites, coach houses, granny suites, that type of thing. Okay, so this is the province of Ontario. There have been similar legislation in other provinces. I know that BC has had, BC and Alberta both have had legislation that have been very progressive with densification policies, right? So in Ontario, this has been a really big change, and it's something that we're starting to see with many cities and towns across the province. So the opportunity in the coming years is a literal land grab to acquire properties with larger lots where you can legally change its function from one housing unit to 2, 3, or even more units. So the key is, because the land value where you can build additional housing is already baked into the price of the property, there are no additional land development costs. Because this strategy is still largely ignored by most homeowners and many investors, now is your opportunity to acquire these properties without the potential gains priced into the market. Okay, this may not be the case in several years. So right now, at least I would say for the next few years, you have a unique competitive advantage if you know what to look for. Now, with real estate investing, we're generally taught that there are three aspects of real estate wealth building. So, I've been doing investing for, single family homes for about 12, 13 years now. I've done pre-construction investments since 2006. I've been to a lot of real estate investing groups and seminars, and really a lot of the focus is on three aspects, right? The first is sort of the holy grail, which is cash flow. And these days, it's harder and harder to achieve these just because of where interest rates are. The second is mortgage paydown, paying down the equity portion of your property over time, with a tenant living there. And the third is a bonus, which is market appreciation, right? I like to think of that as a bonus because I don't want to necessarily rely on the market to appreciate for me to earn money. And so this has certainly played a huge role in many existing investors' portfolios in the past decade. And the fourth, which not many people talk about, is forced appreciation. And that's really where the big opportunity lies. And that's really what our focus is. Now, we outlined a number of macro factors that will likely contribute to the continued demand for low-rise residential real estate. But even if the market goes the other way, the strategies help us to mitigate losses since we're forcing value to the property. So I myself, I'm very conservative. I don't like to take a huge amount of risk. I have a young family. And so everything that I involve myself with in terms of projects, I really go into different layers to ensure that I hedge myself as much as possible, right? So these are the four strategies that I use to kind of hedge in case the market goes the other direction. Or, it's a bonus if the market continues, either stays flat or continues to march upward. So what are the four options for forced appreciation that you have direct control over? The first is improving the existing property. So these are standard strategies that flippers use to boost value. It includes cosmetic improvements such as new bathrooms, kitchens, making the house more open concept. It includes exterior work to improve curb appeal, as well as system upgrades. So these are great strategies. A lot of flippers are still able to, turn a really decent profit with these types of strategies, right? And this is really kind of that first step, right? To put it into a baseball analogy, this is sort of your single. And then the next is adding a legal second suite to the property, which is the strategy that most of our clients have used in the past few years to immediately increase their rental income and boost cash flow. The third is adding a detached garden suite on the property, which is effectively a third unit in addition to the second suite. This is a new strategy, again, due to recent provincial legislation in Ontario. And I really feel that this is going to be a really big opportunity. And the fourth is a real home run if you're able to take advantage of it, which is to sever your lot and build an additional property. So here's a property that I'm currently working on with a couple of partners in Brantford, Ontario, which is about an hour and a half from Toronto, where we're actually planning all of these strategies. Okay, so it's your basic 60, 70-year-old mid-century type of home, right, with some stone and siding. We'll definitely be improving the curb appeal. You can see the new paint job here. There will be a lot more that will be done on the outside. New windows, of course. New exterior curb appeal that will be added. On the main floor, we remove the wall to make it more open concept, and it will be a really nice 3-bedroom upper unit. So this is where we will be increasing value through cosmetic improvements such as kitchens, bathrooms, new flooring, paint, trim, windows, and other items. So this is actually where we are in this project. In this moment of time, we don't have the finished product for you because this is something that we're doing right now, but we will be sharing that later on. Here's the goal for what the upper unit will look like. So this is from one of our previous projects. This one was actually in Scarborough, in the east end of Toronto. And of course, we're currently adding a legal basement suite. So we have the permits, and this is where we stand right now. It's just been framed, and we have electrical wiring and plumbing installed. Next up is insulation and drywalling the unit. So we literally took this picture last week. And this is also the end goal for what this is going to look like. And this is also a project that we worked on a while ago. So what you see here is the site plan of this property. The next step after the basement second suite is the potential for a third unit garden suite. So if you look at the site plan, you see that existing house there near the front of the lot. And our goal is to put in that garden suite after. But we're not done yet. As mentioned earlier, there's also an opportunity to potentially sever the lot and build another house. And if you're able to do this, then again, you've really hit the home run. So here's the revised site plan with the dotted red lines as a severance and a proposed new building, which will have its own basement suite as well. And if we're able to achieve this, we will have converted a single housing unit into 5 housing units. Okay, so this is really the cherry on top. Now, at this stage, we don't know if we'll be able to do this. We are working with a private urban planner and submitted this to the city. So we'll find out soon enough. We do have a minor variance hearing with the city in December. Now, the key thing here is that we're not banking on this, and we'll be successful on this project even if this doesn't get approved. Okay. Like I said, I'd like to have sort of multiple plans, plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and I want to be able to protect myself. And I think that everyone investing should do that as well. So all these things that we mentioned, these are things that can boost the value of your property in a very short period of time, in addition to adding quite a significant amount of cash flow. You can gain tremendously by adding value through these strategies. Now, you can then sell the property for profit or hold on to them for rentals and extract value from them. Typically, I think the latter is a better long-term strategy. The great thing about this is that, not only are you able to profit using this strategy, because you're adding more housing units into the market, you're definitely helping the community by providing more affordable housing options. So for the rest of this training, our focus will be on the second and third method, right? So again, baseball analogy, a double and a triple. Second suites and garden suites. So these strategies are for both of these are very similar and is an entry point into the development game if it's something you're interested in. By understanding the entire process for second suites and garden suites, you will gain a great deal of knowledge in all aspects of investing and begin to understand what it takes to get into development. And quite honestly, anyone can learn this, as long as you have the drive and persistence to do it. Okay, so now let's get into the steps involved in second and third suites. Now, just to give you an overview, for those who are not familiar with what a second suite is, here's a simple definition. It's a separate unit within the principal property that has its own living, sleeping, cooking, and bathing facilities. So, there are a ton of other names such as accessory suites, in-law suites, secondary dwelling units. While a lot of their demand has been driven by the high cost of ownership and rentals, a lot of it has to do with the provincial bill in Ontario that was passed in 2012. Because of prices, many middle-income folks see second suites as a viable housing options because they want access to good schools and neighborhoods, and this is why the demand for good quality legal units is important. The thing that defines it as a second unit really is the cooking facilities, so the kitchen, right? That is what will determine whether it's going to be an additional unit. Okay, so garden suites. This is definitely the very exciting opportunity coming up. So 2019 in Ontario, we had Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choice Act. And here's an excerpt from Schedule 12. So it says that if you see at the last bottom part of the sentence, it says that it would allow additional residential units by authorizing 2 residential units in a house. So the 2 residential units would be your main unit and then your basement suite as an example. And then by authorizing a residential unit in a building or structure ancillary to a house, right? So ancillary means detached, right? So detached away. So you can have a separate physical property. So why is this a big deal compared to, developing a house, on a regular lot using the standard method? Well, it's because it's almost like you're building on free land because you already own it, okay? So it's not really free, but it was already paid for. It's part of that property. In any development project, the land cost to develop can range anywhere between 25 to 50% of the total cost of construction. This would include the actual value of the land, plus all the soft costs associated with developing the land into a feasible site to build a house. These would include costs to hire planners, site surveyors, engineers, minor variance applications, development charges, parkland fees, school levies, and a handful of other fees. So I've been through that process several times, and that's a process I'm going through with my property as well. That's a great strategy, but it's a different strategy. Okay, it's probably a little bit more advanced than garden suites, right? So with garden suites, it's kind of that hybrid between adding a second unit and then development. So it's great for many homeowners and investors that may be starting out. Now, in some markets such as Toronto, the land value portion of a property can be even greater than 50% if it's ready for construction, right? An accessory dwelling has a land cost of zero because, again, you already own the property. So if you can save that cost by building a single family property, that really is incredible value. The key is to purchase a large enough property where you can comfortably place an additional home that is anywhere between 600 to 1,000 square feet. My recommended minimum would be around 5,000 square feet. So let's have a look at some numbers, because I think the folks here are interested in numbers. Okay, so I'm going to run a super quick pro forma here on this. These are very rough numbers designed to give you just an idea on the returns. So in option one, we have your standard investment with adding in a legal second suite, so a legal basement apartment. We're going to estimate the purchase price of $500,000. Now, I know that that's unrealistic in Toronto and a lot of markets, but within a 2-hour drive from Toronto, or maybe within a 2-hour drive from Vancouver, you might have these kind of options, right? So you're putting in a second unit renovation for $100,000. The total investment required would be roughly $100,000 down payment and $100,000 for the renovation, for a total capital of $200,000. Obviously, I haven't included closing costs, holding costs, but again, really just to give you guys a quick, rough idea. A reasonable rental income for both units would probably be $3,000 to $3,500, right? So I put $3,200 here, with the main unit renting for $1,800 and the second unit for $1,400, with mortgage and taxes at around $2,600. I didn't include utilities in here because the idea is that you're creating separate utilities where the tenant can pay for that on their own. Now, option two, we have, before I do that, I'll just show you what the cash flow is. Okay, so option one, you would have a cash flow, and this is great. A lot of our investors are doing these second units and they're able to cash flow several $100s. Now in option two, we have also our second suite, but now we're also adding a third unit garden suite. Again, purchase price around $500,000, second suite rental at $100,000. Now we're going to build a third unit garden suite for roughly $200,000. So the total investment required is $400,000. We're assuming that we're either paying cash or getting a home equity line of credit. Now there are options for construction financing that some more alternative type of lenders are providing now, but we won't get into that. We're just going to assume that we're paying this upfront or with our own line of credit. And in this situation, we can estimate a total rental income of around $4,600. The main unit being $1,700. I assume it's going to be reduced a little bit because now you have an extra house on the property. Second unit is going to be $1,300, and then this third unit, this garden suite, is going to be $1,600. Mortgage and taxes are going to be roughly the same, and in this case here, your cash flow is now $2,000, right? So at a very high level, we can see that by doubling the initial investment, we're able to gain roughly 3 times the cash flow. And again, the magic here is because of what we mentioned earlier, which is essentially that you're building on land that you already own, which does not need to be purchased separately or developed. So now let's get a little bit into the process. Financing. The first is financing. You're going to need to gather enough cash initially for the down payment of the property and for renovation costs. We recommend that you start in the most affordable market that you can find within a 2-hour travel time from where you live. Depending on your situation, you may have enough equity in your existing primary residence to start this process. If you don't, we recommend a private loan for the down payment portion from a family member or friend. That's an option. Now, if it's your primary residence, which is great, for those of you who don't own a property, I think it's a great idea to purchase a property in an affordable city or town and perform the strategy on that property first. You can still do it with 5% down with mortgage insurance. But if it's strictly an investment property, we recommend that you stick with 20% down. Again, I'm very conservative. I always like to ensure that I have 20% down for every property that I invest in. Some of that is probably saved up, and some of that could be equity that I've extracted from a previous property. So have the funds available for the renovation of the existing property as well as the second suite as well. Okay, the second thing is finding the ideal property. You can certainly use on-market websites such as Realtor.ca, House Sigma, Zillow, and I'm sure there's a few others. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with finding on-market. There's still deals to be had. The last 3 properties that I've purchased was with a realtor right off of the MLS system. Okay, but of course, you should look at off-market properties as well by being subscribed to wholesalers and always checking things like Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, and Craigslist. You'll be surprised of some of the things that you can find, right? For sale by owner type of websites. If you're adventurous, you can go door knocking as well, or you can do flyers in a neighborhood where you're interested in buying a home. Now, once you see a home you're interested in, check to make sure that you're allowed to add a legal second unit by checking the city's zoning map. Okay, you can easily find this information online by simply Googling the city name and the term interactive zoning map. Okay, so this is a sample for the city of Hamilton. This map is also very helpful in giving you the approximate lot sizes with their measurement tool. So you can see that there's a little tool here that I can measure roughly what the size of that lot is. Now, keep in mind that these are approximate, right? The only way to get an actual size of the lot accurately is to get a land surveyor to do that for you. Check the property to ensure all the items as well, right? You can use our handy 8-point checklist, which you can download for free on our website. It covers 4 important bylaw items and 4 important code items. So these include things like zoning, parking, unit size, lot size, ceiling heights, window size, separate entrances, and room size minimums, right? So there's actually dozens of more things, but these are the high level things when you're going out there looking for property to ensure that you meet these minimum requirements. And these are kind of the expensive things that if you had to, change your ceiling height, for example, in a basement, that can potentially cost you, tens of thousands of dollars. Now, for garden suites, you also need to be aware of zoning, parking, unit sizes, and lot sizes. Okay. Additionally, you need to be aware of building heights and setback requirements because you're building a new structure. Now, if you're able to acquire the property, the next step is the permitting process with the city. Hire a licensed designer or architect who's familiar with the second suite or garden suite rules. That's something that we do here at Suite Editions, of course. Prepare all documentation and drawings submitted to the city. Submit the application to the city. This process will typically take several weeks. An important note here is to get as much of this work completed prior to closing on your property. Okay, so this is to minimize vacancy later on. So whenever you're acquiring a property, it's worthwhile to try to get as long a closing date as possible. Now, that's not always possible depending on the circumstances of the transaction, right? Some sellers may prefer to have a shorter closing, but some might be okay with having a longer closing. They might prefer that because it allows them extra time to, plan for their next move. But for you, if you have that long closing, you can get all your ducks lined up and you can get all this work, a lot of this pre-preparation work done while that existing owner is still paying for, all the expenses of the house. Now, once you obtain your permits, you're ready for the renovation. Now, when it comes to getting contractors for your work, also try your best to plan ahead. Okay, so many good contractors are booked months in advance. Depending on many factors, a brand new second suite can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to complete. There will be typically 3 to 5 inspections along the way from the city to ensure that you have completed everything correctly. And it includes framing, plumbing, mechanical, insulation, fire separation and safety, and interior finishes. The electrical wiring is inspected by the ESA, the Electrical Safety Authority. Okay. Once everything is complete, make sure to obtain documentation from the city to prove that you have a legal second suite or a garden suite. So some sort of documentation so that you're not scrambling in a few years if you're trying to refinance the property or if you're trying to sell the property. You want to have all that, your permit work, your permit documents, and all the paperwork in one so that you can just submit that. And that's really going to help boost the value of the property. Okay, so the last step, once you're complete, there are many different exit strategies. You can certainly sell the property, right? A property with additional legal units is very appealing to a very wide market. You can sell it to a multi-generational household, right? So we have a lot of cultures in Canada where we have, 3 generations living under one household. So there's a lot of demand, and having that extra space really makes it a desirable place for people to live. You can sell it to a homeowner who wants to have the additional revenue from renting out the additional units, either through short-term rentals or long-term rentals. Or you can sell it to another investor who simply wants something turnkey. So if you've gone through the work of designing it, working with a contractor to get all that done, and you can actually just sell it to another investor who doesn't want to do anything. They just want to basically park their money on that property, get their cash flow, and get that long-term appreciation, right? So those are options for selling. Renting out, I feel like, is probably the best strategy. It's to hang on to the property, rent it out yourself, enjoy the high cash flow, and then you can always refinance to extract value and repeat the process, right? So this is commonly referred to as the BRRRR strategy, BRRRR, which stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. This is a very common strategy for a lot of investors. It's the one I use personally, as well as many of my clients. Now, there's a third option. If you want to extract more or all of your initial capital, including the down payment, you can also choose to joint venture with someone, okay? In this method, you also lower your leverage, and at the same time, you share your profits with someone else. And there's nothing wrong with that either. So, when it comes to exit strategy, you can sell, you can rent it out, you can get into a joint venture where you manage the property. There's no right or wrong answer here. It depends on your own circumstances, right? As a matter of fact, as much as I like to rent out all the properties, I can't afford to. I need to basically, in order for me to do other projects, I need to sell some of them. So I use both strategies. I sell and I, hang on to them, right? Some people, if they have a lot of capital, they might just hold on to the property. So find out what works for you. Okay, so we've covered a very high-level overview of investing in second suites and garden suites. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I actually get really deep into the nitty-gritty of every aspect of this strategy in our training program that we have coming up in October. I'll share a little bit of detail about that with you shortly. Before I do that, I really want to remind you that if you just take one thing away from today's training is that now is the time to acquire properties that you can add these additional units, right? Such as second suites, garden suites, and potentially even, severing the lot and building more. I think that these properties are going to be very difficult to come across and even impossible in a few years' time, right? Anything that pops up on MLS, somebody's gonna acquire it if it's a decent sized lot, right? Or a lot of them will be sold kind of internally. You're gonna notice that a lot of new homes these days have lots that are tiny, 2,000-3,000 square feet at the most, even if the home itself is bigger, right? So here in the GTA, we see, a lot of these places that were, quite frankly, when I was a kid growing up, it was farmland. And now, you don't even have single family homes, right? You have stacked townhouses, high density stacked townhouses that are in these areas, right? So it's very hard to come across basically properties with land, right? Now you can certainly go way up north or wherever into the countryside, but you're not going to have the demand, you're not going to have the infrastructure, right? Unless you're off grid. So this is why it makes sense within the urban fabric, have purchasing property with larger lots, like 4,000, 5,000 and up, is going to be a very good strategy. Okay, so I encourage you all to take advantage of this window of opportunity. So yeah, we do have an upcoming training in October. So if anybody is interested in this, you can just go to our website for more information. We have about 22 students signed up in our class starting on October 18th. I won't go into details here, but if you're interested, definitely go to our website, suiteadditions.com, and you can have a look at it there. I also encourage you to use as much of our resources as possible. We have a lot of free resources. We have 2 guides on our website, 8-point checklist, as well as our legal second suites beginner's guide. We also have an upcoming garden suites guide, which if anybody's on our email list, they'll get a copy of it as soon as it comes out. Follow us on social media. As Arian mentioned, he saw me on YouTube. We're trying to be quite active and putting in, actual videos of projects that we're working on, right? So for the project in Brantford, we recently made a video about doing waterproofing and stuff like that. So we want to give you, good detailed information that's fluff free as much as possible. Okay. We have YouTube, we have Instagram and Facebook page with a lot of updated content. So I encourage you to use those resources. So that's it from me. I think we're doing good for time. 5 minutes to spare. Is that right, Aaron? Oh, I think you're muted.
Andy, amazing job. Wow, that was really, really well done. Thank you for that. Guys, help us give Andy a big thank you for just sharing his wisdom with us. I'm telling you right now, if you're not looking at this seriously, you need to. As an investor, I own real estate. I'm looking at this. I'm going to take a look at Andy's course and join his email list. I've been on your email list, Andy, and it's like, I don't read all the emails, but those are really high value emails, and you cover kind of the different topics of garden suites. One day it's legal, financing. I just found those really, really helpful. So there are so many questions right now. I know Jackie alone has like 15 questions. So we're going to get to the questions really soon here. I'm going to share a little bit about our financial freedom coaching. For those of you, a lot of you are familiar with it. This is a program that's changing the lives of Canadians. Enriched Academy, we've been around for 10 years now. And one of the challenges we see with a lot of financial literacy and education is it stops there for most people. A lot of people attend webinars like this, they go to courses, they learn a lot, they feel great. But a year goes by and their financial situation doesn't change. They're continuing to struggle with debt, continuing to have a tough time saving. Their investments aren't where they want them to be. And that's why we created this coaching program, because we were just tired of hearing the stories of Canadians where they weren't making the progress that they expected. And again, the challenge is action. Education is honestly the easy part. It's easy to educate yourself and read blogs. The challenge is taking action. And what happens for most Canadians, you'll see it. Number one, they get nervous and scared. They get excited by something like garden suites, but when it comes time to actually take action on it, they get scared. And that fear holds them back. Another big challenge is lack of discipline and motivation. It's great to get excited for a week, but to maintain that motivation over a 6-month, 1-year period is a real big challenge for a lot of us. And that's why having a coach by your side to help you make sure you're taking action to hold that discipline and that motivation for you, it is so helpful for Canadians. Or we just encounter roadblocks. On your journey to financial freedom, you're gonna hit roadblocks. The real truth is, are you going to get through them, or are you going to let those roadblocks hold you back? So what's the coaching program and how does it work? It is 6 one-on-one virtual meetings with a financial expert, 100% personalized to you. You're going to get a customized financial freedom plan that's really going to highlight where you are, where you want to go, and what are the steps that you need to take. A financial coach is going to create that for you. The best part about it, it's 100% personalized to you. Whether you have debt, whether you're already saving, we're going to get an understanding of where you're currently at, where you want to go, and let's create a plan to help you get there. An accountability system. This is the most important part about coaching, is the accountability to make sure you're actually doing the things that you need to. And the goal of the program is to create a foundation that will pay you forever. It's 6 months. But this 6 months is going to last the rest of your life. And you get lifetime access to our financial literacy courses and tools. So does the coaching actually work? Here are the results of our average student in just a 6-month period. It's absolutely shocking. The average net worth increase is $50,000 in just 6 months. The average credit score, 28 points. Total advisor fees saved 1.25% by lowering their MER fees. The average Canadian is putting an extra $1,200 back into their pocket each month. Decrease in credit card debt, and passive increase $3,000. So these are the results of everyday Canadians that are taking action and joining the coaching. So what we've made accessible for all of you here today is a free financial assessment meeting, a 45-minute meeting with the financial freedom consultant to help you create a plan for your future. So if you are interested in scheduling your free call, there's going to be a link in the description. Make sure to click that link. We have 3 people that are available to do the calls. So make sure to click that link. And thank you so much. Do a Q&A. So if you do have questions, please do ask Andy in the questions box. We got a few here. Jackie asked this question, Andy. In what scenarios would you buy a property although the cash flow is not positive in today's market? I find it difficult to find a great deal.
Yeah, that's definitely a great question, and I think that given my experience anyway, it's hard to find a property based on the existing condition of the property that is going to cash flow. Quite honestly, and this is why one of my friends who is kind of in this space, he talks a lot about creating the deal, right? Not finding the deal. And so if you're employing the strategies that we talked about, you're kind of adding value through it, whether it's cosmetic improvements or whether it's adding a second suite, you're actually creating that value to increase the cash flow, right? So I mean, to answer your question, most of the properties that I get into, a lot of my clients get into, if you just look at that existing property, it's probably not cash flowing, but they have to put in some work. They're not doing the work themselves. They have a team, right? So they have a team of contractors and a professional team around them that really helps them through that process. But in those cases, it is very, very tough to get something that is positive cash flowing. And these days, it seems like with where our system is headed, it's all the money is being made by asset price increases and not kind of that passive cash flow. So I feel like the environment has changed. You really have to add value to the property.
Absolutely. And Andy, when you're looking at a property, let's say, Jackie's someone, she wants to buy a property by the end of the year. And as she's doing her analysis, looking at different investments, should she be looking at all the things that you mentioned, from the land, seeing if you can add an additional home, doing a renovation to make it a 1 unit to a 2 unit, and adding the garden suites? If you buy, like for me, if I want to buy an investment property, I want to know I could do all those things. Is that possible? Is that realistic to do all that research before buying the property?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade, and even when I look at property, I can never be 100%. So the idea is that you want to be as close, you want to be as knowledgeable as you can be. No one's going to have the information 100%, right? A lot of it, there's a process. For example, we've owned this property for several months. We're not even sure right now if we can sever it, but we have to go through that process with the city to figure it out. The idea really, and it's something that I didn't talk about, but one of the biggest ideas with what we're doing is that we're trying to get an asymmetric upside. So I'll give you an example. If we spend, let's say, $10,000 or $15,000 going through the process of trying to sever the lot, and we fail, we lose $15,000, which sucks, right? Nobody wants to lose $15,000. But if we actually succeed, then we would gain a land value in today's market, maybe $150,000, $200,000. So that's a
Wow.
huge asymmetric upside. And the idea is that if you do enough of this, right, you're gonna benefit from it. So if I look at something and I say it's 50-50 chance, 50 chance they're gonna reject me, I lose $15,000 because I have to go through that process. I have to pay the fees to the city. I have to pay consultants. But then if I get approved, if it's a 50-50 chance, right? So the analogy I like to give is that if you go to the casino and you go to a roulette table, and if you lose, you put $100, you lose $100. But if you win, red or black, you get $1,000. Would you be at that roulette table all day long, right? I think
Absolutely.
you would be. So it's the same idea. Is you get that asymmetric upside by evaluating and looking some of these advantages. And the only way to do that is through education and experience.
Yeah. Yeah, asymmetrical risk and reward is one of the greatest investment techniques, out there, right? Like, can you take a little bit of risk for a huge upside return? And what that allows you to do, it allows you to be wrong several times and still make money. So I like that
100%.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that you threw that in there. Jackie's second question is, For your second suites and garden suites, are you doing long-term or short-term rentals on Airbnb? What's your criteria for selecting which strategy? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, so all of mine have been long-term rentals. I
Hmm.
take my time to find the right tenants, to find the people who I feel like would be a good long-term tenant. But I also know people that do short-term as well. The thing is, with short-term, you have to be careful in terms of the local bylaws of that city. So some cities will not allow second suites to be, Airbnb or other short-term rentals, such as Toronto has a bylaw, right? So you just need to know what the rules are specific to the city. But I think depending on what your expertise is, either strategy will work. I just prefer to have long term, and I find the right tenant. I don't have to worry about them, other than maintaining the property.
Awesome. That's great. All right, Bob said, great session, great info session, Andy. Have you participated in adding a second story to a bungalow for increased value?
That's a great idea. It's not something that I have done personally. We have converted existing second stories and third stories, even like a lot of the old Victorian type homes, to be the second unit, and then the main unit is actually the main floor plus the basement. That's the main unit. So these second suites aren't necessarily in the basement all the time. They Most of the time they are, but they could be on the second floor, third floor. They could be a rear addition. So I have not, but I think that's potentially a great strategy as well, because putting in a second floor, that's almost like the strategy that we're talking about, right? You're not building on land, you're building in the air, right? Which is still,
Right.
you already own that space.
Yeah.
It's just that you have to make sure you have the proper, sound and fire separation and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Emily asked this question. My basement is already done with 2 bedrooms, but need to add a separate entrance. Is this something that your company can do? How much more or less would that cost me to make it a legal suite?
Yeah, another great question. I would say a good percentage of our work is actually converting existing illegal suites, or existing, just finished basements, rec rooms, family rooms, and turning them into suites. And it's unrealistic for us to say, everything has to be ripped out and redone. And I think the cities recognize that, and so they've been very reasonable in working with us to get them legalized. So, adding a separate entrance, depending on whether it's an internal entrance or an external entrance, that can be quite costly, depending on which strategy you use. Yes, this is something that our company does, and I would say, in terms of finding out what the costs are, you should reach out to us on our website. So we do have a contact page on our website that you can check out, and happy to discuss that on offline.
Amazing. Thanks for that, Andy. So as an investor right now, Andy, what are you looking for in terms of location of property and type of property? You hinted at the 4 to 5,000 square foot, so you can add in that garden suite. Are you looking at properties in Toronto? Let's use Ontario as an example. Are you going outside? And then the second part of that question: what type of property is it? You know, uh, just a single family home that has a potential to add in a second suite, and then a big enough lot to add a garden suite?
Yeah, exactly. So, I live in Toronto, and I would love to be able to invest in Toronto. It's just that the prices are just astronomical. But I think that probably will change when Toronto has their garden suite policies in place. Probably towards I would say probably it's going to be early next year,
Mm,
and I'll look into that a little bit more. But as it stands right now, I'm looking outside of Toronto. So the markets that I'm particularly working on with are Hamilton, Brantford, Kitchener. um, I've built some pretty good relationships with some of the local city staff there, in terms of working through projects, which is key. I think it's important for people to find a location that they like, whether it's their own hometown, or somewhere that is they have to drive to, and build those local relationships, right, with the public staff, with contractors and other service providers, and that will really make your process a lot easier than
mm,
having you're kind of being spread too thin, basically, geographically.
absolutely. And then the type of property you're looking for, is it that single family with the unfinished but potential for a second basement suite?
Yeah, I'm looking at lots, obviously with a basement that's either entirely unfinished, or really 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 old, that needs to be gutted and redone, because then you don't you're not paying for that extra cost, right?
Yeah.
So I usually like to go one end or the other. Either it's done really nicely and I have to have minimal work to bringing it up to legal status or um, legal standards, or I have to kind of redo it. I don't like that middle ground because that middle ground means that it's kind of priced in and you're paying a little bit
Yeah.
more, but then you end up having to redo a lot of it anyways, right? So my strategy is kind of on both ends. And then the other question was, larger lots. Yes, I'm always looking for larger lots. I don't even look at lots that are like 30 by 90. Like I just don't bother with it. I filter that out.
Yeah, I like that. You could just, can you even filter that in your search? Like lot size
Oh,
has,
I mean, like when I work with realtors, they send me stuff that is already
right.
pre-filtered, and when I'm looking at it personally, I don't even. Yeah, I think there's some options for that.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, Andy, the team that is required to do this successfully. You know, you mentioned the relationship with the city is quite important. But would you say, the mortgage broker, real estate agent, talk a little bit about your team and kind of what roles they play?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the transaction standpoint, right at the beginning, you need to make sure you have a good lawyer, mortgage agent that will, give you an idea of what you're eligible to borrow, as well as a realtor. So realtor, lawyer, and mortgage broker is going to be your key team at the beginning during the transaction stage. And then once you get into it, of course, you're going to have a good home inspector. You have, a designer or architect that can assist you, or engineer, and then definitely good relationships with a general contractor, or good relationships, or with individual sub trades if you want to manage the project yourself, right? And even if you're managing the project yourself, you're going to need that one really handy person that can do a lot of the stuff that can help you, on site, because you're going to be busy, right? You're not going to be able to go on site every day.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Andy, thank you so much again for joining us here today. And everyone, thank you for being here. If you haven't already, please check out Andy's YouTube channel. That's where I stumbled upon him. I thought his videos were absolutely fantastic. His email list is right to the point, packed with value. So, Andy, thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time this afternoon.
Bye for now.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.